Welcome to the Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast with Forrest Kelly.
Hey, I'm Aaron Vaccaro. I'm the CEO of Liquor Lab, a cocktail experience business in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, before we get into Liquor Lab, the thing that caught my eye in reading your bio was Top Golf. Give us a little bit of background where you grew up and your schooling and then professional career.
I grew up in what we call the Texas part of California, down south of Fresno, and then up in the North Valley in Sacramento, where I actually live now. And I went to school at a small place called Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington, where I went to study originally math and physics until I figured out that I had no business doing research. And so I ended up going to grad school to get a master's in finance so I could go into investing. And through a little bit of luck and some hard work, I ended up coming out of school with a job at a venture capital firm called West River Group in Seattle, Washington. West River was interesting because it was a small firm at the time. There was about 3 people, and they had invested in some startups, managing money, for a handful of families and foundations. But they had made a big investment in this company called Topgolf, which at the time had about 10 locations and, maybe 90 million in revenue, but it was still sort of a regional concept. And my partner, Eric Anderson, founder of West River, at the time said, "Hey, I'm about to make a big investment in Topgolf, and I'm going to become the CEO. And I need somebody to, be my kind of right-hand man and chief of staff and crunch numbers and things." And so he offered me this job at, 22 years old, I guess I was. And then came out, and for about 6 years, we ran Topgolf, building it from 10 locations to about 70 by the time we sold it. And it was doing about 1.1 billion in revenue. And in 2021, during the pandemic, we sold to a Callaway golf company. And along the way there, I got to do everything from finance and strategy to real estate, marketing, operations, kind of, I call it like the Topgolf MBA. So a lot of experience. And a portion of that was food and beverage. And of course, the whole thing, is part of what we call the experience economy. So I got a lot of experience building one of the best brands in the world in F&B and experiential entertainment. And that's kind of what we're still doing today, just in a bunch of different areas.
So the Topgolf experience, I'm sure it had evolved from the beginning to the end, huge, because once you get people there for, what do they book? It's been a couple of years since I've been, but it's you book an hour?
Our average dwell time is actually like 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah. So within 2 hours and 2 minutes, I bet you the cost of when you first started, how much people spent in the beginning to when at the end during that 2 hours increased, 3, 4, 5-fold?
Yeah, it's interesting. Over time, if you go way back to the beginning, before we got involved, it was like a driving range with a food truck. And, they started with just the technology to track the balls. And then they added in a bar where you could get a beer and hit balls. And eventually it evolved into this amazing experience where 90% of our food was from scratch. And we had an incredible, sports bar and wine and beer menu and cocktails. And it definitely elevated over time as we upped the experience. We grew the menu and we grew all the games you could play and all the things that made people want to stick around.
Did you have wine as a selection as an alcohol choice in the beginning, or did you bring that in later?
Yeah, I mean, wine was on the menu from the time I got involved in 2014. So I think from the beginning, as soon as they started serving beer, started with wine as well.
Did you find if there was a stigma to drink wine while you're playing golf?
That's a good question. I think because of the way that Topgolf is set up, I mean, it's like asking the same question, is there a stigma around eating tater tots while you play golf, which we also did. And so the whole thing, it was like, I describe it as a driving range plus a, bowling alley plus a sports bar, because you're sitting around and in between taking your shots, shooting the golf ball, you're drinking wine and you're eating food and whatever you want to order. And then at the same time, you can go and we've got big TVs with the games on and everything. So I think we kind of broke from the beginning, whatever kind of stigma there was around golf, shattered it from day one and kind of never looked back.
Yeah, and I can attest to that because there was multiple times when it was, hey, it's your turn. It's like, no, go ahead. The nachos just got here. I'll get you on the next turn. So, yeah.
It's so funny. There's a funny stat that illustrates that around, we have all these games and put a lot of effort into designing the games, whether it was, hit the different parts of the target or who could do the longest drive or who could, hit the colored targets in order. It's all these different games you play. But you have to have a certain level of skill to actually play with that kind of precision. And it turns out that something like 90% of the balls hit in all the years I was there were played in basically practice mode or just the basic game mode. Because for most people, it wasn't really about competing and trying to play the game perfectly. It was about just having a great time practicing hitting balls into whatever target you could hit them into, and then eating and drinking.
Yeah. And then also on a subtext, it shows you how much golf is mental, in that when there's nothing on the line, you just grip it and rip it and you write down the thing, 300 yards. Like, hey, why can't I do that when it's pressure's on?
We always used to say, like, I grew up playing band, and we always said our best playthrough of a song or a marching band, it's never going to be on the field. It's going to be in practice at some point. So you just have to accept your perfect song. It's probably going to be in band practice, and hopefully you get close to that when you're actually out there on the stage.
All right, let's grab that bottle of Liquor Lab and pour a drink of exactly what Liquor Lab is all about.
Liquor Lab basically is an experience business where, anybody can come in, take a class, and learn how to make, 3 cocktails. It actually started out of Chicago. A guy named Owen Meyer, who was the founder, he came out of the liquor industry and marketing, where he was spending all this money on advertising and samples and billboards and things, but thought there's got to be a better way to get product into the hands of consumers so they actually experience it, and rather than just seeing it on a billboard. And so he started the Liquor Lab in Chicago to basically an experiential marketing platform for spirits brands. So they would provide the product, and then he would run these classes of basically bringing in consumers and people, and even industry folks, distributors, bartenders, and then teach them how to make drinks using those brands. And so the theory being, like, if you learn how to make an old fashioned using, Maker's Mark, that's probably, you're going to have some sort of brand loyalty to it, right? It's like the same way I still have a big loyalty to there's this little winery in Placerville, California called Lava Cap, where my parents took me wine tasting for my 21st birthday. And I learned so much about wine going through that experience. And it was so memorable. It's like I still have this great attachment to it. So by the same token, at Liquor Lab, people come in, and each class is 90 minutes. We host them at our location in downtown Nashville, and then the second one in Louisville, Kentucky. And, you learn how to make 3 different cocktails, and the class might be all margarita themed. It might be whiskey cocktails. It might be famous movie cocktails. We come up with all these different fun themes, and each one has 3 drinks, and you learn how to shake, stir, garnish, combine the flavors. And for most people, it's their first time actually making cocktails, and they come out with this love of, like, oh, I can actually do this. And it's demystifies a little bit this sort of like secret, really cool art that, that bartenders do, but most people don't get to try their hand at.
Yeah. So do you think that had part of a play in your experience in the winery in Placerville, and that how it made such an impression on you going through the wine tasting and the whole experience that you want to bring that to Liquor Lab and how to make cocktails?
It's funny. I've never thought about that before, but it's a great point. And I do think there's something about, like, there's some saying about, tell me something and I'll forget, but show me and I'll remember, and make me teach it and I'll never forget it. There's some saying like that. I think this idea of actually getting people hands-on with a product or an experience and walk them through it and teaching them step by step is going to make a much bigger impact than just telling them about, here's the drink and this is how I made it. People are going to forget immediately. But once you've actually done it yourself, you're going to remember forever. It's like, okay, I actually understand the ingredients that went into this drink, and I can taste the lime juice and I can taste the sugar and the rum. I think it just totally sets it in a much deeper way.
What do you say to people who say, well, I've heard it so many times, let's go to this bar or wherever, they serve the strongest drinks, the strongest cocktails. And I'm always thinking, like, time out. Making a cocktail is about the blending of the fine. I mean, it's 2 ounces of this and exact amount of that. It's kind of a science class to make it just taste perfectly. And it's not about doubling up on the alcohol. What do you say to that when people say that?
Yeah, that's why it's a laboratory. It's a liquor lab. We always encourage moderation, right? We run a business where we're teaching people to make themselves alcoholic drinks, but moderation is really important. I'm not going to be one of the guys that say, oh, actually whiskey is good for you in certain, increments. It's not, but it can be fine as long as you don't overdo it. We like to think that creating a craft cocktail that is about the flavor and it's about the drink, it's not about getting drunk, is a perfectly, thoughtful and enjoyable thing. And I'll tell you for myself, I love cocktails. I got into this business as an investor, not because I was a bartender, but because I was a huge fan of bartenders and cocktails and enthusiasts. But I hate being drunk. I hate that feeling, and I certainly don't like the feeling the next morning. And so we always encourage people, like, this is about the flavors and about the art of mixology. And you can really have a great time and enjoy one or two and not overdo it.
Can we talk about what it costs for the class and how long it takes and all that?
Mm-hmm. Our classes are 90 minutes. And generally we host in the evenings, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're around $65 to $75. And you get to make and enjoy 3 cocktails plus the experience of hanging out, learning from the bartender, socializing. And so when I look at it, most cities you go to, you're going to pay $15, $20 for a cocktail now anyway. So 3 drinks is probably going to be $60. So I think, we also offer snacks. In some classes, we do a full dinner service. So for $75, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Oh, wow. I was expecting a lot more than that. Yeah. You've got some room for padding that price there. So do you make a video of them that they can, put on TikTok or whatever?
Oh, we were just talking about this. A lot of people film themselves. It's, like the most Instagrammable thing in the world is, making your drink, shaking, and then it's always beautifully presented at the end. So we have a lot of people that doing that. And I was just thinking we should install little phone holders at each station so people can mount their phone and film themselves.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Line it all up. And just in watching show like Bar Rescue, where they show them how to do everything. Is that how high of a level you're teaching?
Most of our classes, I wouldn't go that far. Occasionally we'll do industry trainings, distributor trainings, where we'll go more into technical detail on particular, building recipes, building drinks. Most of those folks already have all the basic skills down. I would say with our public classes and most of our private events, it's much more about the basics of stirring a cocktail, shaking a cocktail, how and when to use ice in the drink versus not, and then teaching some basic recipes like, this is an old fashioned, this is a margarita, this is a daiquiri. And most of the time we'll put a little spin on those recipes. So for example, in our boat drinks class we're doing for summer, we've got a blueberry mint mojito, we've got a strawberry pina colada, and then we're doing a cocktail called a jungle bird, which is like a tiki drink. Again, with the ingredients, all super simple to make, and all of them are just, a little twist on the classic.
Have you picked up any tips on this that you thought you knew in a personal way that you thought, okay, I didn't know that?
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't. It's like there's all these things that are at the tip of the iceberg. I think the most interesting thing I've learned that's been really fun to put into practice is basically all cocktails are just some riff off of the same, basically 6 templates. There's 6 basic cocktails. There's the old fashioned style, daiquiri, highball. I'm not going to get all of them, but essentially any cocktail you're drinking, you can narrow it into it's going to be one of these 6 categories. And so as long as you understand the formula of the proportions of the spirit versus the sweetener versus the flavors and the format of, the ice and the type of glass and things, if you have the formula down, you can kind of experiment and create anything you want using different ingredients. And that's been the really fun thing for bartending at home is I learned from these guys at Liquor Lab who are professionals, and I can go home and be like, man, I can, make an old fashioned, but then with just tweaking this one part of the recipe, you can turn it into 100 different things and figure out what tastes best to you.
I just like to see the experience when they've got the shake down. They're up around the ear and they do that twist with the wrist. And it's just so subtle, but it's just such a hypnotizing rhythmic motion that they're doing. But when you see somebody who's uncoordinated and they do it, it's okay, you're shaking, but you're not doing it right.
Or it's, clean up on aisle 5.
Yeah, I bet you've got some great video footage of that.
That's always my problem is the two-handed shake is pretty easy to keep it together, but as soon as I try to get cool and do the one-handed shake, I feel like I'm falling apart half the time.
Yeah. Because of your wine experience, have you had sessions about piggybacking a wine experience? Although, you're not going to be mixing wine, but trying to incorporate that into it as an added feature or something?
So we've done wine tasting classes. Pre-pandemic, we had a few wine tasting classes, and then over the COVID, we were doing a lot of Zoom events, and we did actually some beer tasting, coffee tasting, and wine tasting. And what I found is, most wineries do some kind of tasting room. There's a lot of places out there that you can go learn and you can taste brands and taste wine. There's really not anywhere else that you can come learn how to make cocktails like Liquor Lab. And so our strategy right now is let's focus on what we're the best in the world at, and we know we can create a unique experience. And let's let the wine pros, do the wine tasting at their facilities. And, we've partnered with people, we can do different things, but we're kind of focused right now on staying in our lane. And, I think that wine can have its place in a cocktail occasionally too. One of my favorites actually is a Port Manhattan.
Tell me about that.
Oh, man. So Manhattan is basically whiskey and sweet vermouth as the basic ingredients. And if you swap out the vermouth for, a nice, I use like a ruby port, you get basically a similar flavor to a Manhattan. It's just a little more wine tasting. And I think it's a little more complex, and it's just really good.
Wine is really losing traction, and you see it in the stores. Just so many cans, mixed drinks in cans. You've got caffeinated alcoholic drinks. I think I even saw one that was alcohol with protein in it. It's like, wow.
You've got the NA is growing. You've got a lot of seltzers, the healthier stuff. The straight spirits, brown liquor especially is down this year in a big way. So tequila, vodka is still popular. Whiskey, bourbon has had a really tough year. I think the data is showing us Gen Z is not drinking as much. And so that's why I think it's not like, drinking isn't going to go away. I just think it might get a little more thoughtful in terms of how we consume, how healthy it is, and the volumes in which we consume it. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for the world, for our health. But I think I would really hate to see, obviously, the industry go away as a whole, because I don't think that's ever going to happen.
I think Liquor Lab is bringing the joy back into it, taking a little less focus on the alcohol part and more on the experience and the education.
Golf was drinking as a sport actually for a few years, and until, if you included Topgolf in the number, then golf was growing for the last 10 years. So one of the themes that connects these two businesses, and actually a lot of things that we do on the investment side, is taking these experiences or these cultural sort of institutions like golf or wine or cocktails or soccer, things that are sort of enduring parts of our culture, but in some cases are maybe a little bit aspirational or inaccessible. With golf, it's like you got to buy expensive clubs, you got to wear funny clothes, book a tee time. It's really hard to swing the clubs, and it's a big barrier to entry to get into playing golf. And so what we did at Topgolf was say, just show up as you are, wear what you want, have a good time, swing the club that way, drink a beer, and that's golf. And we introduce people to the game in so much of an easier way. Similarly with Liquor Lab, what we're doing is say, you want to learn how to make drinks, you don't have to buy all the tools, stock a whole home bar, or get a job as a bartender. Just show up as you are with your buddies or your boyfriend, and we'll lay everything out in front of you. We'll walk you through it step by step. And at the end of it, you can go home and you've learned how to make drinks. And if you really liked it, then maybe go buy some tools and get after it in your kitchen. But what we want to do is break down the barriers and make something that's really cool and aspirational, really accessible and easy to try out for the first time.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, if you're ever in town in Nashville or Louisville, we'd love to see you at Liquor Lab. Come on in for a cocktail class, or if you're coming for a corporate event or a bachelor party, you'll have a great time.
Aaron, what I love most about what Liquor Lab is doing, and maybe you probably feel the same way, is that you're not just teaching people to make a drink. You're helping build a moment, whether it's a date night, team celebration, birthday bash. You're not just mixing cocktails, you're mixing memories here. So you might be wondering, could I shake up a decent margarita, or would I look like an idiot using a bar spoon? The answer is, go find out. Liquor Lab could be built for you, not for the experts. And let's face it, after a class or two, you might become the go-to bartender in your friend group. Stranger things have happened. And if you do go, send us a pic at the Best Wine Pod and at Liquor Lab. Thanks for the conversation, Aaron. Much success with Liquor Lab.
No worries at all. It was really fun. Thanks for the conversation.
Ever wanted to shake up your own cocktail? Our classes are led by the best in the game. Shaking and stirring, you'll never drink the same. It's not just a class, it's a vibe, it's a blast. With cocktails, friends, and good times that last. Mix and master and make it yours at liquorlab.com. glass to you. Big thanks to Aaron, the man with the plan, shaking things up like no one else can. From the best 5-minute wine podcast crew, liquorlab.com, we raise a glass to you. Mix and master and make it yours.